everyone, and welcome to the last week of the crochet along for the Moonflower Bolero cardigan. This is the final installment where we're going to work our sleeves, and I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that's joined me from the beginning right the way through. We're finally on the home stretch and we've nearly finished our cardigans. So I've already worked the first sleeve so that I can show you what it looks like. So we've got a few decreases here around the underarm, and then it's mostly worked straight until we get to just below the elbow where there's another decrease, and then we add as much as we want for our length before adding the trim the same way that we've done the trim around the edge of the body. So you'll already be familiar with how that's finished off. The first thing we need to do is join our yarn at the underarm. So we need to join our yarn at the single crochet before the underarm and the single crochet afterwards. This can be a little bit tricky to work out where that is. You can see here the last single crochet we made of the last yoke row where we fastened off. That's easy to see because we've got the tail end on this side. So that's the single crochet where we're going to join our yarn. And then we need to slip stitch to the single crochet on the other side. Now these stitches around here, they can be a little bit difficult to decipher. But if you lay it out like this, you can see the natural join where the sleeve starts and the rows on this side, there's kind of a little indentation and they sort of line up nicely to give us that sleeve cap. So the single crochet to join on the other side is actually this one here. So you can see that's the base of our triangles. We've got a double crochet 2 together here and a double crochet 2 together here. So we're going to slip stitch this single crochet to this single crochet here. This is going to reinforce that opening there, and you can either leave that open so that it matches the stitch pattern like a triangle, or you can just use the tail ends to weave that in a little bit just to make it even stronger. So let's just look at it again from this side. We're going to join our yarn in the single crochet here. This was the final stitch of the last yoke row we did, and then we're going to join it to the single crochet on the opposite side, which is this one here. So don't try and join it right here. It's actually to close the gap that we need to join these two here. So normally I would just join by pulling up a yarn loop, but because I want to make sure that this is nice and secure, I'm actually going to insert my hook and then place a slip knot on it. And this is going to make sure that nothing can come undone. So I'm going to pull the hook through with the slip knot on the other side and then slip stitch. This is that single crochet here to this one. So we've got a little bit of a gap there that just sort of matches our stitch pattern, and then you can close that up with these tail ends or leave it open. It's up to you. Now if you're going to make the short sleeve option, that's the only slip stitching that you need to do, and then you're just going to chain 1 and work our finishing stitch pattern around this edge. So you're working single crochets in the chain 2 spaces and the top of the double crochets, and a half double crochet in each single crochet. And then you're going to work that round followed by another round of single crochet, and then the slip stitch back loop only, just the same way that we did the trim for the body edging. If you're doing the long sleeve option, however, we just need to do a few decrease rounds so that we don't end up with any additional bulk underneath the underarm. So what we're going to do is chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into the top of the next double crochet 2 together. Like this. Then what we're going to do is turn it to the wrong side, so the other side. So I slip stitched on the right side to the double crochet 2 together, turned to the wrong side, and I'm going to slip stitch now to the opposite double crochet 2 together. Like this. This just gives us almost like an underarm seam without having to actually do any seaming, and it gives us a decrease. So this is going to reinforce that underarm area while taking out any additional bulk. Then we're going to chain 1 and single crochet in this same stitch. which is the top of a double crochet 2 together. Then we're just going to work the stitch pattern that we're familiar with as normal all the way around the sleeve until we get back to this underarm seam. Okay, sincere apologies, as I think my camera may have cut out a little bit there. But just after I did the single crochet to start the round, I continued in the stitch pattern all the way around the sleeve until I've got to this point here. So I just did a chain 2, double crochet 2 together over that same stitch and the next double crochet 2 together, and continued on as normal. So now I've got round to this side. I'm working on the wrong side here. This is almost the last double crochet 2 together. And you can see here that there's the single crochet in the middle, and then this is the top of the last double crochet 2 together. And it's actually next to the beginning. We've got both of those double crochet 2 together sitting next to each other. So instead of beginning and ending our sleeve rounds in the same stitch, they're actually going to end in adjacent stitches. And this is going to act a little bit like an underarm seam running along the underside of our sleeve, and it's going to help to reinforce the sleeve and make sure it doesn't stretch out too much. So we keep going in our stitch pattern, chain 2, double crochet 2 together over this one and the last one, which is this here, chain 2 and single crochet into this last double crochet 2 together. And to join, we're just going to work a slip stitch to the first single crochet. Now the instructions do separate out here for different sizes, so make sure that you're following the instructions for the size that you're making. For my size large, I'm going to repeat this round 2 more times. So I'm not going to turn just yet. I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to slip stitch to the top of the next double crochet 2 together again. Then I'm going to turn back onto the right side now, and I'm going to slip stitch to the opposite double crochet 2 together. Again, this gives us a nice reinforced seam as well as decreasing. Chain 1 and single crochet in the same stitch, and then we're going to work in the stitch pattern. So we chain 2, double crochet 2 together over that same double crochet 2 together and the next, chain 2 and single crochet, and I'm just again going to work this all the way around until I get back round to this side here. I'm almost back around to the beginning of the round again, going into the last double crochet 2 together, which remember is now next to the beginning stitch. So I've got a single crochet here and a single crochet here, and I just slip stitch to join those 2 together. So I'm going to work this one more time. I don't turn yet. I chain 2 and I slip stitch to this double crochet 2 together. Now I turn, trying to make sure that I keep the rest of the cardigan out the way so it's as clear as possible. Now I've turned and I'm slip stitching to the opposite double crochet 2 together to give me yet another decrease. Chain 1 and single crochet in the same stitch, and I'm again working in the stitch pattern all the way around to the other side. Almost back at the beginning of the round again. Double crochet 2 together into this last stitch here, and a single crochet, and then we just slip stitch to the first single crochet of the round to join. And there's our nice underarm seam there. So now I've worked 3 decrease rounds. I'm ready to go on to repeats of round 4 and 5. These rounds are worked in the normal stitch pattern without any decreases, so we do want to start off by turning. So there you can see our sleeve is working up nicely. There's where we joined, and there's the seam running along the underside. And so for the beginning of round 4, we're going to chain 3 to start off. Now if you worked the gauge swatch, you'll be familiar with working the stitch pattern this way, as if we have edges. So we chain 3 to begin the stitch pattern, and we double crochet into the top of the first double crochet 2 together. And this acts like a double crochet 2 together. We chain 2 and single crochet. Then we're going to work the stitch pattern as normal all the way around again to this last stitch here. So now we're coming up to the last stitch. So this is the last double crochet 2 together. Remember, we started here coming out of the single crochets with our chain 3 and double crochet, which acts like a double crochet 2 together. So that's the same stitch we're going to finish on. So we do a double crochet 2 together here into this double crochet 2 together, chain 2 and single crochet, and then we're going to finish with a chain 2 and a double crochet 2 together over this last double crochet 2 together and this last single crochet here. So now we're here and we're going to slip stitch to the top of this double crochet here to join this round. So there we go. Now one thing I forgot to mention that I personally recommend that you do is adding in a stitch marker. Because these rounds are continuous, it gets actually very difficult to count your rounds. So when you've worked your last decrease round, I recommend popping in a stitch marker anywhere in that round, just so that you can now see how many rounds from this point you've worked. So I worked 3 decrease rounds, and now I'm beginning to work the plain even rows around with no decreases. So I can see I've worked 1 here from this stitch marker. This is going to help me keep track of the number of rounds I've done, whether I'm just following the pattern or whether I'm making any customizations. So this is a round 4 that I've just completed, beginning and ending with double crochet 2 together. Now I'm going to turn to the other side, chain 1 and single crochet in that first stitch. I chain 2 and I double crochet 2 together, and I just work around as normal in the established stitch pattern again. Now it gets a little bit difficult to see here on the wrong side of the sleeve because the sleeve itself is in the way. I'm almost back around to the beginning of the round. Just like we did with the gauge swatch, if you begin the row or the round with a double crochet 2 together, you also end the row or round with a double crochet 2 together. And if you begin with a single crochet, you also end with a single crochet. So here we began this last round with a single crochet. We're going to double crochet 2 together to finish off this stitch pattern, chain 2 and then single crochet back in this same stitch. Then don't forget, we slip stitch to the first stitch to join. So I've worked round 4 here, followed by round 5, and these always come in a pair. So if you're customizing, make sure that when you're working these rounds, you work a round 4 and a 5 together before adding in any other decrease rounds. The decrease round itself is worked as a single round. It's a standalone round by itself, but it has to follow a round 5, and then you would follow that with working a round 4. So for my size large, I'm repeating rounds 4 and 5 a total of 4 more times. So that's 8 rounds in total. And having worked it once already, I know that I need to work 10 rounds from where I've placed this stitch marker. And that should end up 1 inch just past my elbow. And at that point, I'm going to add another decrease round as my forearm starts narrowing. If yours doesn't, you may want to skip that decrease round. If you are a smaller size, for example, or if you just prefer a straight sleeve rather than a fitted sleeve, feel free to skip that mid-sleeve decrease round. I'm then going to work rounds 4 and 5 another 2 more times, or until I've basically reached the length I want my sleeve, minus the 1 inch that's going to be added when we work the cuff. So please do feel free to customize this sleeve however you like. If you prefer a completely straight sleeve, you might want to skip some of these decrease rounds. Just work the 1 decrease round to reinforce the underarm seam, and then you could work it in straight rounds all the way down, perhaps just cinching it in at the bottom, or you could work a more fitted sleeve with more decrease rounds. Try it on as you go and just make sure that you're liking the way it's fitting as you're working it. And then do make a note if you deviate from the pattern so that you can duplicate it exactly on the other sleeve. Now, when I get to the end, I'm just going to show you with the other sleeve. Down here, there is a final decrease round that just brings it in a little bit right at the cuff for the 3/4 length sleeve. And then we work the trim the same way we did for the body. So we're working a single crochet around the chain spaces and the double crochet 2 together, and then a half double crochet into the single crochets. And that's basically it. You can see here on the underside of the sleeve, we have that nice seam, and that's just going to reinforce the sleeve and make sure it doesn't stretch out or get really baggy. Okay, so I'm just going to leave you guys here now. You can see here the decreases we worked, followed by rounds 4 and 5. And then you're just going to continue as is in the pattern until you get to the end of the sleeve, and then you work this cuff here to finish it off. And I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody that's joined me in this cardigan crochet along. Please like these videos if you enjoyed watching them, and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more tutorials like this. I definitely recommend that you don't skip blocking so that it opens up the stitches and everything lays nice and flat. And then you'll have a lovely cardigan for you to wear in the springtime. Thank you once again, and I hope I see you next time.